Folks, thanks a lot for the 70,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome. But we're not stopping here. Let's push it, folks, to 100,000 subscribers. So give that support to the channel and subscribe and hit that like button down below to reach our goal of 153 likes. And now let's go for it. The story kicks off with this intense rain just pouring down, covering the deserted streets of a city. There's this young lad making his way across the barrier of a bridge. After a quick internal ponder, he just hurls himself into what seems like the end, death and all. But just when he's about to have that split-second regret, bam! A vampire pops out of nowhere and swoops in to stop the fall, telling the kid to hold back the tears, because his blood's gonna taste even worse if he cries. Next thing you know, the vampire's sinking his teeth into the poor lad's neck for a quick snack. Now in some distant, unknown world in this massive castle, there are a few voices pondering on who the next big shot lord is gonna be. One voice is all in for this big shot ruse. Then this old crone calls for quiet and spills the beans that the next vampire lord's gotta be someone with some real kick-ass powers. But get this, only a perfect vampire, one who's found his destined partner and turned her into a vampire, is worthy of the throne. So the vamps around are scratching their heads, wondering who fits the bill. And there's this one dude, seems real keen on the destined partner part. Back in the human realm, there's Yamamoto Mito. Just got the boot from this ramen joint called Man's Generation, because the boss found out he's been crashing there overnight. Mito's going on about not having a dime to his name for a proper place, so he's asking for some time to sort it out. But the boss ain't having it, saying customers have been griping because there are so many gals coming in to see him that the guys won't even set foot in the joint anymore. So he hands Mito his stuff and declares it's the end of the line. But hey, as a silver lining, the guy throws in that a looker like Mito won't have trouble snagging another gig. So there's Mito, walking the streets, feeling low because he's lost yet another job, this time without even getting paid. He knows it's on him, but that doesn't stop the gloom. Then this group of school gals walks by, chirping about his looks. Mito turns around, trying to figure out what's up, and these gals are practically losing their minds because they got a glance from the handsome dude. But Mito's got bigger fish to fry, like a measly 12 yen in his wallet, meaning another night camped out on the sidewalk. So he's reaching out to his folks up in heaven for help, reflecting on how he's needed it ever since his folks kicked the bucket. Cop asked him once if he remembered anything from the fire that took him, but his mind was a blank. After that day, all that mattered was buried in the rubble of his home. For the longest time, he bounced around from relative to relative, feeling like a burden wherever he went. Then one day, he got the boot after a relative took care of his compulsory education. So from then on, Mito was on his own. According to her, a pretty face like his wouldn't have a rough time on the streets. So the kid's been desperate for work, but he either gets the boot from manual labor gigs because he's not as burly as the rest or runs into the brick wall of unemployment keeping him on the streets. So now, all Mito's got left is to cross that bridge and try his luck on the other side of town. Meanwhile, over at La Fray's restaurant, meaning Strawberry in French, there's this handsome and charming waiter living up to the name of the joint, serving up tasty dishes and visually stunning plates to a crowd of women swooning over both his looks and the strawberries meticulously laid out. After tending to his customers, this waiter notices the rain just starting. Outside, Mito's out there on the prowl for any chance to shake off unemployment. Once the rain starts, he sees folks popping up their umbrellas or kids his age calling for their moms to pick him up. But Mito's got only himself and his backpack, using it to try and dodge the rain while making a dash for some cover. Finally, he makes it under the awning of La Fray's, but his little backpack didn't stop his clothes from getting soaked, and all that running made his body realize it hasn't had a decent meal in ages. So Mito staggers and falls right into the restaurant, accidentally knocking over a potted plant. Embarrassed, he starts cleaning up right away, and to top it off, he cuts his finger on a clay shard. That's when a La Fray's employee comes over to tend to him. Noticing the bleeding, he takes Mito to fix up his wound in the back. Mito's thinking it's no big deal, this injury, but the waiter shows his true colors by licking the kid's wound. But man, it tastes so foul, like sewer-level bad, that Mito can't help but cry and gag in disgust. According to the waiter, Mito's blood is thick, sticky, and tastes like meat that's gone bad and sat in the sink for a week. The kid's like, "What's your deal, man? You're the one who started licking my finger." But the waiter's like, "Hey, your blood looked good. Got curious." With that said, Mito realizes this dude's doing some vampire stuff, but of course he ain't buying it. So the waiter kicks the kid with the rancid blood out of the restaurant, and Mito's out of there, tripping on the bizarre behavior of that guy. In the back of La Fray's, the waiter gets approached by another dude asking how the tasting went, seeing as it's been 10 years since he's had any human blood. The waiter's like, "How'd you get here, Komori?" And he's like, "It's my duty as a butler." So the waiter's saying the taste was awful and human blood just ain't it. But Komori thinks the bad taste is because the victim ain't loved by nobody, cause apparently The amount of love a human receives and gives back determines the flavor of their blood, which can be as sweet as a strawberry. Obviously, female blood's better, but a loved-up man's can be just as sweet. So finally, Komori asks Ruka what he thinks about taking care of the kid till he reaches that sweetness level, because even though Ruka's been off human blood for 10 years, it's clear he wanted to sink his teeth into that young guy. However, Ruka responds that he prefers to stick with his strawberry juice if blood tastes that horrible anyway, and tells Komori to stop trying to give orders around there. At that moment, Komori remembers that he is the founder, and putting the waiter in his place, he informs that in his homeland, many are questioning Ruka's ability to take his place as leader. According to the founder, this is because Ruka has forgotten the purpose of being in the human world, and this is causing a commotion in the conclave. Therefore, to become a perfect vampire and take Komori's place, Ruka must fulfill the duty assigned to him. At this moment, another waiter asks Ruka for help because the restaurant is very busy, and before he leaves, Komori asks the vampire to remember why he's here. After an exhausting shift, Ruka asks his colleague to pass him some strawberry juice because the bad taste in his mouth is sinister. The colleague asks if he ate some junk, and Ruka replies that it was thick, bitter, and icy junk. Having said that, he recalls the founder's theory about the lack of love in the victim, while the other waiter asks what he's talking about. Ruka tells him to forget it and reflects that the young man must be very lonely to not have anyone's love. Speaking of him, Minnow runs like crazy to protect himself from the rain, but a motorcycle passes by quickly and splashes water on the boy. With this added annoyance, Minnow thinks about how lucky he is and gives up avoiding the rain altogether. A little further ahead, he crosses the bridge back to the other side of the city, but he knows that wherever he goes, he has nowhere to go in the end. In Midow's mind, this is a clear sign that nobody will miss him if he happens to leave this world, and in his longing for affection, he plans to throw himself in the hope that anyone, will mourn his death. However, he gives up the idea and believes that tomorrow he might find a job, but ends up slipping and falling off the bridge altogether. Then, after Ruka saves his life, the vampire asks how he is, and Mido wonders when was the last time someone asked him that. Ironically, even in the face of the circumstances, Mido feels happy and welcomed, so Ruka finally bites the boy's neck and licks the blood that was dripping. After that, Ruka throws Mido unceremoniously onto the fence and says that his blood is horrible, but it'll do. Then he wants to know if the boy wanted to take his own life on that bridge, and Mido says that nobody needs him. In that case, the vampire suggests that Mido become his source of food because that way he will be needed. Aware of the proposal, Mido gradually accepts that he is in the presence of a vampire, undead beings that suck the blood of their victims, but soon the boy faints from everything he experienced that day. During this time, a dream of a vampire that takes him to the skies and feeds on his blood invades the boy's mind, who is then awakened by a cat and a bat flying above his bed. Seeing the boy wake up, Ruka informs him that they are in the boy's dormitory of Hijiragoka School for Boys where he lives and studies. Finally, he asks the boy to take a shower so he doesn't get sick, and after that, he can go home. Mido asks about that story about being a food source, but Ruka replies that he was just kidding because he may be thirsty, but he prefers not to suck the blood of a scared kid. However, Mido understands the warmth he felt as a reason to surrender to the vampire, but as soon as he affirms that he wants to become a vampire's meal, Ruka throws him into the bathroom and tells the emotional boy to take a quick shower to get out of there. Mido says he has nowhere else to go afterwards, and Ruka replies that it makes sense for the boy's blood to be bad because nobody really loves him. Mido asks what he can do to improve his blood, and the vampire reveals that for that, the boy needs to learn to be loved by him. Upon hearing these words, Mido becomes emotional and remembers every moment when Ruka spoke about needing him, seeing in it the possibility of receiving the love he never had before. So he agrees to be loved for his blood to become less bitter and become a food source. Having said that, the vampire opens the door and introduces himself as Sotone Ruka, promising to love Mido every day, but the boy feels embarrassed and locks him out to take a shower. Ruka says that from now on, the two will live together there, and Mido makes it clear that he's not doing it just to have somewhere to stay. Then the boy questions if he's doing the right thing while he changes clothes and outside. Ruka reveals that Mido saved his life because he never managed to suck the blood of women, so he always looked for a handsome boy for himself. However, while listening to those words, Mido reveals his true identity and wonders what will become of her now. Myth dreams about a woman saying that when a girl is loved, her blood tastes like strawberry, which makes vampires crave it more and more. When Myth wakes up, she comes face to face with the same cat from the night before named Marion and is startled to realize she was sleeping smuggled up with Ruka. The girl asks the vampire why he's sleeping with her, and Ruka explains that it's to make her blood sweeter. This makes Myth remember that the vampire let her live with him in exchange for being his food. However, Ruka made this choice thinking Myth is a boy, which makes her wonder what will happen if he finds out the truth. Suddenly, Ruka pulls the girl closer to have her breakfast, She says she didn't know he would suck her blood so early, and the vampire explains that being her food means letting him feed whenever he wants, even if it tastes horrible. Myth realizes that this way she'll end up with holes all over her neck. So Ruka uses his vampire powers and makes the wound disappear with a wave of his hand. Then the girl sees a bat in the room and remembers seeing it the day before. Suddenly, the animal reveals itself to be Komori, Ruka's butler, who, after being introduced to Myth, shows a uniform he brought for her to attend Ijirigoka Boys' School. And so Myth goes to study at the school, which makes her very nervous, fearing someone will discover her secret. Ruka notices something bothering Myth and thinks it's because of the class. So he reassures her, explaining that all the classmates are nice and he'll also be there for whatever she needs. Then the two enter the classroom and Myth introduces herself to all the students in the class, being careful to make a good impression. The guys are impressed with the new classmate, and one of them recognizes Myth, having seen her in the cafeteria where he and Ruka work, and introduces himself as Kagurazaka Takara. Myth is relieved to see that everyone is really nice, just as the vampire said, and she chats with the guys when another guy arrives in the classroom and stares at her from afar. Later, Myth gets tired of attending classes when Ruka invites her to work part-time at the cafeteria because the vampire knows she needs money and his butler, Komori, is the owner of the place. At the cafeteria, Komori accepts the new employee calmly, and Ruka shows Myth the locker room to put on the work uniform. Then the vampire starts changing, which leaves the girl not knowing what to do. He tells Myth to put on the uniform too, and she tries to stall him, saying she'll change later. But Ruka doesn't understand why and starts taking off Myth's blouse. The girl quickly pushes the vampire out of the locker room, and he agrees to go ahead so she can change alone. Myth is relieved but thinks that Ruka almost found out she's a girl and decides to be more careful not to be discovered. After changing, Myth meets Takara and another schoolmate, Juri, whom she finds as cute as a porcelain doll. Then Myth notices the cafeteria customers who were enchanted by the vampire's beauty. This makes her realize that, with Ruka being so popular and surrounded by beautiful girls, he could definitely get blood with a better taste than hers. After that, Ruka asks Myth to go get some fruits in the pantry, and she goes there while thinking that if he can have any girl's blood, he doesn't need her. Suddenly, Myth sees Juri watching her at the pantry door. The guy says she's different from the other students and may have fooled Ruka and Takara, but he knows she's hiding something. The girl doesn't know what to say and Juri approaches her, causing her to hit the pantry shelf and knock some things down. Quickly, the vampire runs to Myth and protects her, but in doing so, he ends up getting hurt. Everyone is worried about him and Juri feels guilty for hurting his friend, but Myth says it's not his fault since she bumped into the shelf. Then the girl takes Ruka to the dormitory so he can rest, where the vampire warns that such a small wound can heal completely as soon as he feeds. Upon learning this, Myth quickly lies down on the bed and Ruka drinks her blood so fast that he ends up choking. She feels bad, thinking it's because of her bad taste, and regrets not having as good blood as a girl's. The vampire consoles Myth and says she's already enough after all, his wound is healed, and he only choked because he drank too fast. Then Ruka puts a vampire tool on the girl's neck, which he explains is called sang sucre and serves to evaluate the taste of human blood, where the blue color means the taste is bad. Myth feels bad because this is the current color of her tool, but the vampire says he will make it turn red like strawberry. Furthermore, Ruka remembers that it's his fault for not being able to feed on girls' blood. Myth is worried and asks why this is. Then Komori, who was in the room listening to their conversation, opens a secret shelf, revealing that the reason the vampire can't feed on women's blood is because he's an otaku who only likes 2D girls. Myth is shocked by the discovery, and Ruka admits that he's a fan of an anime about two magical girls fighting to save the world. Seeing Myth's reaction, he questions what's wrong with being an otaku, since he supports his hobby with his own money and treats real girls well, even though he doesn't get along with them. Komori tells Myth that to make matters worse, every time he suggested to Ruka to feed on someone, his master refused, saying he didn't want disgusting men's blood, and for that reason, he is grateful for Ruka having found her. The girl feels relieved that the vampire doesn't feed on women because of such a simple reason that she starts laughing at the situation and enjoys herself with Ruka, while wondering if she could stay there forever, even with her lie. Later, Mina goes to a restaurant to satisfy her hunger because she needed to replenish the energy that the vampire has been draining. At that moment, the girl notices Takara and Juri watching her, astonished by her appetite. Takara asks if Ruka is okay after the accident he had at the cafeteria, leaving her at a loss for words because she couldn't reveal that the vampire had already completely healed and spent the rest of the day excitedly watching his favorite anime. Stabino simply replies that Ruka is fine because the cut wasn't very deep. Takara is relieved and tells her that Juri was so worried about what happened that he barely slept at night. Then the guy walks away to get some ramen, and Juri takes the opportunity to apologize to Mito. The girl says it's okay and confesses that she really hides a secret from them, and she makes it clear that it's nothing that will hurt Ruka or anyone else. Juri notes that everyone has a secret and says he won't investigate anything else about her. He begins to say that he also has a secret when Taka returns and tells Mito that he and Juri have been friends since childhood. At that moment, the guy from their class who stared at Mito on her first day shows up on a motorcycle at the cafeteria door. The girl asks who he is, and Juri explains that his name is Nikaido Ren and he's a delinquent who constantly gets into fights and advises her to stay away from him. Mito agrees to keep her distance from the guy, but when she arrives at the boys' dormitory, she finds Ren standing right at the door of her room. He tells her that he heard she's sharing the dorm with Ruka and asks them to talk in the backyard. Outside, Ren asks Mito if she doesn't know that her roommate is a vampire, acting as if he's worried that she's in danger, even going as far as punching a wall. At that moment, Ruka appears questioning why Ren went after his roommate instead of saying what he wants to his face, and Ren leaves, saying he has nothing to say to him. After the delinquent walks away, Ruka asks how Mito is and shows concern that her encounter with Ren made her feel worse. Then the vampire starts feeding right there, which worries the girl that someone might see them and discover what he is. Ruka acts as if he has nothing to worry about, and Mito complains about his attitude and says she cares about him, which makes Ruka embarrassed. Not knowing how to respond to the girl, the Otako vampire says a line from an anime. Mito finds it strange, and Ruka explains that he always uses it as a reference to show his love for her. However, this leaves Mito quite irritated. After all, she was genuinely worried about Ruka while he was just repeating lines from a series he likes. After Mito leaves in anger, the vampire wonders what happened since he was supposed to be teaching her about love, not the other way around. Later in Juno class, Mito watches Ren fighting and remembers when he punched the wall with just one punch and notices that he is really strong. Juri hears her comment and says that Ren has always had a somewhat destructive side, while Ruka is so fast that sometimes he doesn't even seem human. Mito notices that Juri is observant when the teacher calls her to fight Ren. The girl gets irritated that Ruka let the guy find out that he's a vampire and tells Ren that she'll protect Ruka from him. At that moment, the guy notices 2 holes on Mito's neck. Then he knocks her down to end the fight in a second and takes her out of the room. Ruka sees the 2 leaving and gets worried about the girl. Olon Ren says he knows that the wound on Mito's neck means that she's not just a roommate of the vampire, and he says he's worried because no one except them at school knows about Ruka, and if she keeps feeding him, she'll end up becoming a vampire too, and won't be able to live as a normal human anymore. Ren says that for this reason, he can't allow that to happen because it's something that can't be undone, and advises Mito to leave and go back to her parents because vampires are already lifeless and heartless monsters. This makes the girl question the guy because for her, living humans are much more monstrous since they judge by appearance and discard people when they become inconvenient, and that's why Ruka has a much bigger heart than other people. Mito still says that if she stays with him, unlike what Ren thought, she won't lose anything because there's nothing left to lose, and that Ruka was the only one who reached out to her. And if he's a monster, she'd rather be with a monster 1,000 times than with people. Even so, Ren says he cares about Mito and will protect her from the vampire. The girl is surprised by the guy's concern, but since she wants to be with Ruka, she just reassures him that she won't turn into a vampire. Then Ren apologizes for being so rough and tells the 2 to go back to class. Mito responds that it's okay and suggests that they both skip class. And so they leave talking while Ruka watches them from afar. The vampire was listening to their conversation and thinks how Ren is very brave to get so close to his food. Then Ruka remembers Mito saying that he has a bigger heart than other people and wonders what he's feeling for her. Hey folks, we're kicking off the new anime season, and if you enjoyed this anime and want to see more of it, go ahead and hit that like button down below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We need your support to reach our goal of 70,000 subscribers. Every subscription counts and helps us grow our community. Catch you next time.